o'clock. Being that it's 9 o'clock or a little after. On Thursday. August 3rd, we're going to start the PNF meeting. Welcome you all. We have a full slate of information here to get to. We'll call it to order, and then we'll go right to the public comments. We have any public comments in the room? Any public?
Yes, Chairman Liz.
Chairman Egan?
Thank you. My name is Tom Egan, 3017 State Road 116, and I am here today to talk on number 8, is the highway and the appropriation of funds for it. I do not agree with the way it's been done. It's been done like that in the past. Talking to our finance director, Paul Kaiser, there's going to be hopefully a different way it's going to be done in years to come. But the way that we have done before, any money that's been left over, it's been gone ahead and put into different projects. And to get this project done, I feel, excuse me, I feel as though this is the way it's got to be, and funds are out there. So we should get this project taken off the books and have it done this year. So I hopefully that you'll all support that and put that in. And if you ever have any questions on how it's going to be done later on, maybe Mr. Kaiser can enlighten you. But as of right now, I think this is the way that it's been done in the past. And so hopefully you'll support this. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Egan. Anybody else wish to speak? Anybody else wish to speak here? Anybody on Zoom wish to speak? Nobody on Zoom, or we have somebody on Zoom?
No hands are raised.
Okay. Okay, so we're gonna close our public comments. Move on to the approval of minutes, Dave.
So move to approve.
Second.
Okay. I
Aye.
have four, I'm sorry,
I.
I, five, oh. The report for the finance department regarding general balance, general fund balance, and the portfolio analysis.
So first, we're gonna start on page 24 of the document that's titled Biannual 2023. So on page 24 is basically our capital project list. I wanted to get started with that. It'll take 23. I want to get started with that because we have people in the back in case they need to speak, and if not, then they can get back to work. As Chairman Egan has said, capital projects have kind of, once they've been approved, that's about it with them. And with the way inflation has been and expenses going up and up and up, they've been going over budget in certain areas more so than others, but a lot of them have been going over budget. The way the capital projects go is usually when we do the capital projects, we then bond for them later in the year. So they were approved in November. We're looking at bonding for them now coming up in August. So once you bond for them, and once they've been approved, we put them into the capital project fund. In the past, the way we've been doing that is we've been identifying each project at the time it's been approved. So I'm checking into whether or not we can just put the full dollar amount that's been approved and not have to split it up by each project. That way you approve $10 million, we have $10 million to do these projects. If one comes under budget, that 10 million can still be used for another one. And we don't have to do this, what looks like back and forth. That looks like we're playing a shell game with projects, which we're not, but that's the way it's been accounting for. So that's what I'm trying to look at with the auditors on proper accounting and what I'm allowed to do in government versus private. So I don't know that, so I'm asking the experts for some help. So that's what we're looking at for the projects. The other thing we're going to try to do, or I'm going to ask all the directors to do, which some of them know that, some don't yet, is each year, if it's an open project, I want us to redo or relook at if we've had some changeovers or if we have some new information that the amount's gonna go up. And when we know that, we should be doing that at least once a year when we do the CIP plan for the new projects as well as anything that's open, to tell the board, hey, we think this is gonna go over. And that should be done yearly. If there are projects that are happening and we get a changeover, that needs to be then looked at also to say, how's that gonna affect the project? Are we gonna still be able to meet within what was budgeted, or are we gonna be over? And at that point, we need to then bring that up, whether it's to the board or to the P&F committee or to the person, the highway committee or whatever facilities committee. We need to bring it up to them at the time that happens, not wait till we go over and then ask for forgiveness. So that's what I'm gonna try to put into place. We are going to have our new financial analyst start looking at the projects on a monthly basis, updating them, asking for new information, so that we stay on top of the projects of what's going on, what's happening, where we are, and if we're over. So, all the projects, I got new information from all the directors, updated them. And we also included, I believe Carol included the projects for the Spirit Fund also. So you have all that information to look at. I want to get this out to you with the agenda, but right now it has been kind of a time crunch. So that is going to be our plan, is trying to put this in the agenda for you, so you have time to look at it and if you have questions. So now I'm going to basically turn that over to the room of people that have projects, if they have some updates that they would like to provide to the committee. Yes.
Can I ask one question about the pooling all the money?
Done,
Are-
okay. Do you think?
With that CIP, yes.
Okay. Go ahead and ask the question, where we really don't have any motion on the floor or anything, we just have an open discussion, but we want to be recognized as we go forward.
So I can ask my question.
Go ahead.
So with the pooling all the money together, are we gonna have transparency yet to know which are under and which are over?
As the projects are open, you'll know what was budgeted and what was spent. Yes, it's the thing is, we're not taking the full amount of money and saying, here you go. Like sending your kid to college and saying he's got a $10,000 scholarship fund, you give it all to him instead of $2,500 a year. I mean, that's what we've been doing, is here's all your money. And then some of the projects get stalled and now it's been allocated to that project and we never do the project.
Okay, on top of that. We have a rule, generally speaking, that any money coming back from a particular project gets reallocated back into the fund or back to the bond. Okay. Now, normally you pay off the bonds early when you can. So that money really is supposed to flow back into the bond or the investor.
Well, the bond is our debt, so we're paying that, so it's really the capital. It's right, and what is the capital project fund is where the money has been put into from the general fund. So technically it would go back into the capital fund because we bonded for the whole thing. So it stays in the capital fund because it's been bonded for until it goes to another bonded project, which is another thing we're looking at, of not fully funding 100% of the capital projects. So that if we have an under amount, we can bring that back into the general fund and not have to leave it in the capital fund.
Any other questions?
I forgot to tell you, I have to leave at 10 o'clock.
That's fine.
I guess my comment would be is we have to move the projects along faster. If you look at the sheriff's evidence garage, that was approved in 21. It's over 2 years and we haven't even took a spoonful of ground out of the dirt out of the ground. You know, what isn't gonna go up in 2 years? You know, when we approve these projects, like this one was approved in April of 21, they should be completed within a year. this isn't even started, and it's over 2 years old.
I know, I looked at that when I was looking at these, and it's either if we don't think we're gonna get them done. Do we not approve them until they're gonna get started? I mean, that's gonna be the more fine tuning of the process. I hate to not approve something and then it doesn't get started. I don't wanna have something sitting here for 2 years and not even breaking ground.
Right, and if you look on page 24, every project is at least over a year over, and they're not started other than 2. You know, it's like when we approve them, and now we're approving the capital improvement budgets in November, they should be completed the following year, because they can go out for bids in January 1st. And a project should be ready to go out for bids when we approve the money. It shouldn't be that, you know, now we're gonna start looking at getting the building. It should be ready to go out for bids when we approve the money. It should be going out for bids in a month or 2 after. So the project should have been started in April, and it should have been completed by the end of the year. That should be our goal, is to complete it in the year that it's budgeted for.
And this was the first year we did it all together, so I think it's a learning curve for everybody to understand. What we're doing now versus what we were doing.
So you'll relay those messages, his statement to the executive?
Yes,
I mean, because otherwise he could veto it, right, if he didn't want to do it.
he's on board with, as far as I know, with the process, but yes, I'm in communication with him. On this, and I mean, he was on board on doing them all at once. So I'm sure we'll fine tune this process going forward.
These are all.
How is this gonna correspond with the facility study? So, we have a lot of projects that are not being completed and then they're kind of being put on the back burner. And then we have this facility study that's gonna be coming around. Actually, it should be close to being completed if I'm not mistaken.
Well,
I see Bob shaking his head. So I know when that's done, are we gonna reevaluate some of these that aren't being done, like Steve talked about, like one of these projects have never been touched.
I believe we're gonna have to look at these and I have to find out if we can bring these back or if we can use other projects that are then approved later.
Right,
For the money that has been bonded for. That's where I need to get more expertise, but.
because it's already been bonded,
It's been bonded
therefore you
already.
need, I see.
I need to have another bonded project. Use the
To
money.
be using that, okay, I see I see your process now.
I believe the facilities, I'm sure Mike will have an update on that, but there are a lot of projects waiting on that. There's a lot of projects waiting on UW and the whole situation. with
Yes.
That's, so
Yes.
there's a whole bunch of projects on here that were approved, but. There's other things besides what the people wanna do. But the hands are then tied with other things that happen, transpired.
That makes sense,
On top of that,
thank you.
everything is date sensitive. And you're looking at each one of these projects as being sensitive to that date that they were first put out there on the CIP plan or on the spirit plan or whatever. Those date sensitive, rolling back or rolling forward, however you're going to do this in order to find a composite of what we can use. Okay, is really how we want to be able to read this to know, we've got a solid handle on it.
We'll be presenting and we'll show the changes or whether I color code it with green, red and yellow, I don't know, but this is the first step at it.
Thank you. Anything further on the report?
Only if there's updates from the department heads.
Department heads here? Any department heads? Bob, are you here? Yeah.
You want me to discuss this now or wait till?
No, now is, we did CIP early, so you guys can discuss it and then go back to work if you wanna.
Well, Bob has got it.
Oh, I get agenda items.
Yeah.
As well, so go ahead.
Well, do we wanna?
We won't do the T project right now.
Well, we're.
Okay. I mean, one thing I can say is though, is as far, like Paul's right with these, with these projects and when, like this T project, when the estimates that we used were almost 5 years old till construction date. So when you look at over 5 years, inflation, COVID, all this stuff hits, we had poor soils, all this stuff adds up. During this time, culvert prices, we get 7 days. Estimates are only good for 7 days. After 7 days, you call for, and that's still right today. We have 7 days on these and they go up. So any of these estimates we're giving, they're only good for 7 days. So, hopefully at some, years prior, maybe Carol can have mentioned this too. I think years prior, construction prices, there wasn't a big difference with this, but I think we've reached this common ground now where in uncertainty, I get truck prices are like, just add 10 to 15% for next year. That's all they tell me, just add 10 or 15%. Well, I don't know if it's, what is it? Is it 10%? Is it 12? Is it 15? I don't know. I assume the worst case, but then all of a sudden they come by and they say, well, yeah, well, then now there's a $10,600 surcharge on top of that. So it's hard. It's not like, I don't enjoy coming to the PNF and saying, hey, we're over budget on this stuff. Not at all, but this is reality where we're at. And, like I said, I'm not pushing blame on anybody. I'll take full responsibility for this, but this is where we're at. And we can discuss when we get to that item, in depth, but so.
So I guess it's if anybody from department heads have an update on their projects. Well, or.
I can talk a little bit,
Okay.
Most of our capital projects are started. The way the process works is you approve the project. And you want to know what the project's going to cost. And we have to include the design work in it. So like the evidence garage has been in design for the last year. We've had changes in how we do operations and how they want to do things. So we've had to go back and change things. One of the big things we found was they want to be able to move large semis into their storage lot. That wasn't something that was part of the original plan. So now we have to find a way to get a 40-foot semi plus a 20-foot cab plus a 30-foot tow truck off of Jackson into where we're going to put the trailer. And we've had to work with the state to try and get another access off of Jackson Street, which we were denied. So now we're trying to find another way through the facilities to get that large of a object into the storage lot. So we've got that all figured out. We're into the final stages of that right now. And the rest of the project's all ready to go out for bid. It's been ready to go out for bid for probably several months. But the big slow up for us is, or for my projects are, I've got to come up and give you guys a price for what a capital project is, because it's just like if you have a house and you want to remodel your bathroom, you want to talk to the guy and find out how much it's going to cost before you approve the project. That's the way it's been working with the county board. So, as Bob says, we work on coming up with estimates and time moves on. And we can't get a more refined estimate until we do the design work, which we can't do until we get the project approved. So it's almost like a catch-22. So, we're working with Paul and trying to figure out how we can change the capital project process so that we can do better estimating up front and get a better response time. So like, the evidence garage, we're almost ready to go out for bid. I've got a project, Nina Human Services chiller. We went out for bid at the beginning of the year. They're gonna deliver the chillers in October. So, as Bob is saying, prices are going up. I get tired of telling the facilities committee that the supply chain is screwed up. What you think you can get this week, next week you can't get. And that's exactly what we've got. Chillers you can't get. We have our 980 project. We're hopefully going to be breaking ground this week. The big slow up with that was we went out for bid in February, but we can't get the building permits until the city used to have a process. They would not give you a building permit until you had drawings that said for construction. You don't get drawings for construction until after you go out for bid and you have all the changes that come through the bids incorporated into your drawings. So that slowed us down 4 months. you know, they've now changed their process in the middle of this project to that they'll give you a building permit based on something saying for bidding purposes. You know, some of the other ones that we've got going on, the USDA remodeling. That has been a nightmare because I can't go ahead with remodeling until I've got the lease agreed to with the USDA. And I am on probably the 12th iteration of what the cost for the lease is gonna be with the USDA. So, you know, fortunately though, there are changes and I went out for bid again. I didn't have just one bidder, the bids came in lower. So now I have to go back and I have to revise all the paperwork for them. And then just last week, you know, I asked them, well, you know, how do we adjust for inflation with the bid? And they said, oh, well, you don't adjust for inflation. You gotta have that in your original rent. So that's slowing down that process. And I've got to talk to Paul is how do we adjust a rent for a 10-year lease and not have it be obscene to the renter? You know, I can take the cost of money out 10 years and say, okay, that's going to be your lease this year, but they're not going to want to pay, you know, 4 times what it should be. So somehow I've got to cost average the lease payment, and that's, you know, I got to fill out all the paperwork, send it back to Washington. They have to take their time to review it and get it back to me. And once we have a lease agreed to, then I'll be able to go ahead with the remodeling. But we're not going to spend, I'm not going to spend $100,000 of county money only to have the USDA say, well, that's too expensive for us. We're not going to move in. So, you know, we've got that. You know, the district attorney remodel project's all done. You know, we just have to get the final payments cleared through the books. The Orange King roof, we're fighting with the contractor because he owes us some paperwork. So we haven't paid him off on that, but the roof's done, been done for a year, I think. The USDA remodel, we talked about, the Oshkosh Human Services elevator. That's been out for bid since the beginning of the year. We can't get the parts yet. We're still waiting on the brain box, which is the only thing we're still waiting on. We're hoping to have a ship date of August 15th. So when August 15th comes around, we'll find out if we actually have all the parts that we can go ahead and fix the elevator. But I've got, Capelli and Dietrich is just chomping at the bits. They're losing money because they put the bid in a year ago and their costs are going up just like everybody else's. So we're waiting on a brain box with the elevator. I'm trying to think of what other ones that we might have. If you have any of the capital projects you want to ask about, I can probably tell you with them right off the top of my head. Speaking about the facilities condition assessment, that I'm hoping to be able to bring the draft report to the county executive early this month and go to the facilities committee at our normal meeting. And then as Paul was saying, we're going to take a look at what it means for our buildings. And if there are some projects that are in the pipeline now that don't make sense because of what the report says, then they'll be reevaluated and rescheduled. And we're hoping that this process will make a better concrete plan. And the way we've got it now is they will be assisting us with the cost estimates and they will be assisting us with updating them yearly. So that will be a big boon to us. But, you know, if you have some specific capital projects that you want to ask me about, I'll try and answer them the best I can.
Mike, we're gonna be getting up to the T project, the Pioneer Road and T County Trunk T.
Yeah.
And there are 3 projects in there,
Mhm.
okay, that are going to have to do with, you know, changes in
Right.
dollar amounts and all of that kind of thing. Can you stay with us on that?
Yeah,
I mean,
if you,
come back for that particular.
I can come back to it or I can speak to it now.
Come back to it.
Okay,
Come back.
and if you have any other capital project ones,
I just wanted to say thank you for going into detail and explain a little bit. I mean, just as a normal person
Yeah.
trying to get things done, I feel your pain. I mean, I had a dryer that went out 15 years
Yeah.
old and they're like, yeah, you just gotta get a new dryer because we cannot physically get this part anymore. So I just had to throw away my awesome dryer and go get another one just because
Right.
of parts. So, and that's just me as a consumer. I can't imagine a large scale of what you're going through right
And
now.
It's really frustrating, you know, and as Bob would say, you know, we call up for copper wire to do a project. And they say the price is good until you hang up. If you don't
Wow.
order the spool of wire now, if you call me back tomorrow, the price is gonna be different.
Yeah, and I know about the elevator.
Yeah,
I go to an over 55 community and their elevator has been down now for 8 months because they can't get parts. You
yeah,
know, but
you know, and it's,
lightning struck it and took it out and now I mean, this is an over 55 community. I get it. I feel for you.
you know, and it sounds like a cop out on my part to say that the supply chain is messed up. You know, I just read an article and the CEO of Ford is just saying, we don't go a week without a supply chain issue. And, you know, and they have some horsepower behind them to get stuff.
Yeah,
And if they can't get it, Winnebago County is just a gnat in the whole picture of it. You know, we don't have any clout, when it comes time to get anything.
I guess my comment, Mike, would be like, you know, you take the day-by-day warming shelter, within a year that was completed. You take the tiny houses on Fernal. They're basically got 30-some houses built, and that started about the same time as our 980 houses. Why does it take us so long to get the permits? Yet the private sector, like the 980 housing versus the tiny houses, don't have any ground moved yet. And they got 17 houses people living in, and the other 17 are almost complete. The day-by-day warming shelter is done, and they've been living in it since May. So how can they go through the system so fast? And yet we don't even have like the evidence block. That's 2 years, and we don't even have the design yet.
Well, going back to the evidence, I told you the scope had changed as what we had to do. So that changes how we have the design.
But 2 years,
Well, and
that's 24 months.
I know, it takes time to do that. And everybody has got labor issues, just like we do. You know, there's a dearth of people working out there. And the way this tiny houses go, they're not government. When I was working in private sector, it's a whole lot easier. And when people say, make government work like private sector, I wish we could. But there are laws and there are governing bodies that put roadblocks in front of us. You know, the tiny homes had they didn't have a county board to go through, with all due respect. You know, we've got to go through multiple committees. We've got to go through the county board. Then the 980 is not a very happy topic to talk about. The city didn't want it there. They said they wanted it there, but they put more than they could of roadblocks to slow us down to do it. You know, the tiny homes was something they wanted. It got ran through. 980s, nobody wants. That's what slows it
Okay,
down.
Mike, we'll get into the details a little bit later. We've got to
Okay, thank you.
finish the report here.
Hello, I'm Jennifer Ritten. I'm standing in for Patty Brincourt in IT. She started her professional development academy today, so she had her first meeting. But we are doing the redundant fiber loop project and echoing a lot of the things that they've said. Our bid didn't get to go out until May because there was a lot of back and forth between whether the funds were going to come from ARPA, Spirit, CIP. So our bid went out in May. It was a public works bid. And our lowest bidder was NTD, and they have yet to produce the required performance bond to start the work. So we would love to break ground on our project, but our lowest bidder, I believe there was only 2 or 3 total. Our lowest bidder is not following through on what they need to proceed with the project. So we've been working with purchasing and trying to get that paperwork so that we could start on the project, but that's not happening yet. The next bidder was twice as much. So if we can't get the paperwork and proceed with our lowest bidder, we will be coming back and having to ask for more money because, you know, that's a challenge too, because now here we had two bidders, vastly different prices. And if we can't get that one to follow through, we will have to probably wait because, as the construction season goes on, prices go up because if you bid in January, they're like, yeah, we want your work. And then in May, they're like, yeah, we're really busy. We don't really need your work. So, if we don't, Patty feels that if the paperwork does not get completed by the current bidder, that we will have to rebid probably in January. Because if we would try to bid now, we're not gonna get good pricing. So that's where we're at. We would love to start, and that's a delay on, like you were talking about, the other resources and the people. Like that's a delay on our engineer and our project manager that we separately have retained to do the fiber work. They're waiting to do the project too, and we're on their schedule for this year. So if we don't get it done this year, now we're delaying. It's that ripple effect, unfortunately, to the other parties involved in the whole project. So.
Time sensitive, everything. Date sensitive.
Yeah, we would love to start, but we've been waiting for paperwork for several months.
Okay, thank you.
Yes,
We gotta,
oh. Go ahead.
It's just, how much longer are you giving them? Like, is there like what's the time,
Well, that's the
like a
key
month,
situation,
2
right?
months, yeah.
Because if we don't go with this bidder, now we're in the situation of
Right.
not being able to do
So
anything.
you wanna wait as long as you can.
So,
to get the
right.
paperwork
How
done.
long?
Yeah.
There's a very fine balance there between, okay, we'll give you more time versus we just need to move on, but we can't move on because we have no other alternatives. Or we could ask for a lot more money to go to the next alternative. So that's unfortunate. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you.
Any good news today?
These are all on projects that are in the works.
Yes,
Is that
yep,
correct?
I can speak to the parks projects in the works. So we have our LED light, and Sunnyview Expo asphalt project at the Expo, that we partnered with Highway on. They completed the asphalt last year. And we partnered with facilities on the LED lights. We had some supply project issues with that as well with LED lights, but those actually are almost complete. That'll be complete, I'm sure, within the next few weeks, next month. So that project will be closing out. The Sunnyview Expo project, the bigger one with the ponds, when I first started here, that project was mainly complete last year. We had a few items that we actually pulled out of the project to make sure that we stayed under budget with the absolute necessities. So this year we were able to complete some of those and check some of those off. Some of those were having to deal like with a road back towards the Netzer property that's a permit base with wetland delineation. So we wanted to get that done so that didn't lapse in 5 years. So that project actually should almost, we're finishing the final cameras here in the next month or two. And actually facilities is helping us run some wire with that in IT. So that project will be closing out. And we've kind of changed the way, so the Sunnyview Expo had the engineering and the construction all in one bid, or in one request to the board. And then when I started doing some capital projects going forward, so like Runman, we asked for the engineering in 2022. We did the engineering last year, so that way our engineering price would stay within a year of when we wanted to construct. So then we went out to bid for Grumman this year. Grumman's actually in the middle of construction. We are within budget at this point. For that project, we have 70,000 in contingency. They've already dewatered, or they've already dredged, they've dewatered. They're working on the first pour for the launch itself this afternoon, actually. And everything seems to still be on time. The bathroom, which is the one that we were the biggest worry about, because it's a precast, so it's built off-site in a different state. It's actually shipped in. That was the one we were worried about. So far, they still say it's on time. But so that project's going well. And then the Waukau Dam project that you approved the engineering for. We have been working on engineering this year with the plan to ask for the construction for next year. With a lot of our projects, we have a lot of DNR or Coast Guard or Corps of Engineer approvals. So through the engineering phase, we get all those permits all lined up, so that way they're ready to go with construction, so. So far, and Walkout Dam, we did a kickoff this summer for the engineering, so, that's Parks updates, I think that's all our projects,
Sounds good.
thanks.
Morning, Jim Shell, our road director. I've got a couple of projects to update you on. First and foremost is the project that was approved last year by the county board, which is our ongoing T-hanger project. We broke ground in late March, early April on the project. Did some demolition on the site, the old asphalt apron that was there, and 5 structures that we removed as part of the project. We got through May and June with a lot of the site work, and then in mid-June, late June, early July, the contractor was able to start erecting structural steel for the hangar buildings themselves. They kind of took a pause last week during AirVenture, although we allowed them to work if they could. Couple days last week, we noticed they weren't working. Like a couple days into last week, we noticed they weren't working, so we got with our engineer and said, you know, this is one project we can actually continue on through AirVenture, which historically on our airfield projects, we have to take pause. And they got back with the contractor and said, yeah, they'd love to be working this week, but they can't find hotel rooms. So that's kind of a good thing and a bad thing, but at the same time, we all know what happens during AirVenture and all the economic impact of that. So that has restarted now, as of this week, first few days this week, they're starting to put up the actual walls for the hangar buildings themselves. So I'd love to have anybody out for a tour of the project site if you have some time. The next few weeks are really starting to come together. And so our goal is to have them completed by October 1st. Till next week, Wednesday, we'll have all the lease agreements coming to the aviation committee. All 20 units are spoken for. We've got signed lease agreements for the 20 tenants that are going to go into those hangars. So that's a very good thing. They're short-term leases, so they won't come to the full county board, but the aviation committee approves them, and then we get those folks in there. So we're very excited on that project. We actually do have another project that's just starting to kick off, but we just went out to bid for. We're back in the April timeframe, we received a bill grant, bipartisan infrastructure law grant that was competitive for all control towers in the country. We received $200,000 and it's 100% federally funded project for upgrades to our air traffic control tower. So that went out to bid to the Bureau of Aeronautics. We had a very tight timeline on meeting the federal requirements because they needed to see the bids back and be prepared to award a contract by July 27th, which was last week during AirVenture. Kudos to the Bureau of Aeronautics and our project manager who just kept moving it through because we ended up getting through some processes that usually take a lot more lead time and a lot more time to accomplish. But he was able to kind of do some things concurrently so that we could actually be awarded the bill grant. And so we've got our paperwork in now to the feds in order to receive that bill grant. So it's in the amount of about $200,000. The upgrades to the tower will be a new access control system because ours is being only 15 years old as the tower is. The software 15 years old is just not up to speed anymore. Some of the hardware will also be replaced with that. We're going to actually install a couple of CCTV cameras that monitor the entrances to the building because we don't have that currently. New chairs up in the tower cab because they're just a random assortment of chairs up there. Phone system throughout the building, and then window shades for the big windows in the tower cabinet. Those are definitely aging out. So that's all the work to be completed under the bill grant. And then separately, we budgeted $70,000 in our operating budget for the county this year to replace the chiller in the tower. So that's in addition to that bill grant. So we just started working with Mike and Paul in the facilities department on the work. I know it's a long lead time to get a chiller, so and we're hoping we can accomplish it within that 70,000. But the chiller in the building is still running off the R22 refrigerant. Mike can attest to anybody that's had to buy refrigerant. R22 has gotten crazy expensive, and we've also been having quite a bit of issues with the air conditioning in the building. And even last week during AirVenture, we were having some issues, and the facility staff was amazing getting out there very quickly to bring the temperatures back down because controllers don't like working when it's 82 degrees in the tower cap. So we definitely need to get a replacement of that chiller, and we're starting that work now through the facilities department.
Does the EAA help pay for any of that support for the tower?
For the tower itself,
I mean, you wouldn't even have a tower if it wasn't for the EAA.
perhaps. We've had a tower since the 1960s. We had a control tower from mid 60s through 2008 when we built the new facility. It was a federally funded project build the tower itself. Now, the ownership is Winnebago County on the building and the structure. The contractor's salaries are all paid through a federal contract, that's contract tower. So the FAA basically pays the contracted company, which is Midwest Air Traffic
But
Control.
my question is,
Staff
can
it.
we get the EAA to help pay for that facility?
Well, it's a year-round
Oh.
facility that's offered services to the general flying public. I think it's important to remember that AirVenture is a public fly-in. There's people from all over the country that come in for the event. So the answer to your question is no, EA doesn't directly contribute to the operating expense of the tower. We do lease them a vast amount of land and they pay their fair share that way.
Doesn't answer my question, but.
I think
that
they're trying to
we
answer
can
your
ask
question,
them
they
to
do
pay
not
towards it.
directly contribute to the operating expense of the tower. Annually, about $40,000 to operate the tower. We receive well in excess of that with the federal government paying the contract controller salaries.
Anything else? No. Thank you, Jim.
All right, thank you.
Anybody else? Your, part of your report.
Okay, so we can start back on page 1 of the financial highlights. We're gonna still be on the same one, which is mid-year, end of June. I also did provide a end of year packet, which we will not be going over, but it is designed the same way as the mid-year one. You can review this end of year one for next PNF meeting when the auditors will be here and jot down any questions you might have about our end of year financial status. So starting on page 1, this report has been prepared for the county board for a number of years. We're presenting it to you for the first time in its entirety here to go through the entire report. And we start with each of the funds' financial statuses, starting with the general fund. So the cash and investment balance as of mid-year is 56.9 million. That's basically the equity and cash for all of the activity within the general fund. So every department that's within the general fund. Property taxes are also in the general fund, and we have received 65.6 million of the 71 million that was budgeted. 92%, because they're due by the end of July. And the treasurer's office did do a mailing this year, a reminder mailing to get them to turn them in, and they said they had a great response and property owners getting their second installment in earlier. The revenues for the whole fund are at 77%. Underneath that paragraph, it gives you each of the different types of revenues that are within the general fund. So the taxes are the property taxes, and then there's all the other types of revenues there and what percentages they're at. There's certain revenues and expenses that you could see should be at 50% because we're mid-year, but there's other things that aren't exact month to month, same amount of expenses. So not everything will be at 50%. The delinquent taxes as of right now, I think is about 4 million for 2022 and prior. Non-operating revenue, our investment income is at 117% right now in the general fund. So the general investing that Paul does, when we get our interest, we allocate the money that we get by certain funds. So the general fund gets the majority of it, and the non-levied funds also get some of the interest income as well. But because the market turned so favorable this year, we're higher than we were last year. And also just looking at where our market value is right now on our tracker system, our adjustment would be just over a million if we were closing at the end of the year for mark to market. So it's coming back. And then expenses. So our whole general fund operating expenses are at 60% of the budget. And then we have our 5 categories. We have labor, 49%. That's about what you would assume with labor because everybody's paychecks are halfway through the year. Travel's 53%. Capital is 42%, other operating is 50%, and then the non-operating expenses is 73%. Right now, we have a deficit in the general fund of 6.7 million. And this deficit relates to the transfers out that we did for the capital projects that we just approved in February. And $1 million transfer for the purchase of the shelter care building. So overall, we have other surpluses within all the general fund that use of general fund money, we're still showing a positive. Then we get into our human services fund, and their cash balances are at roughly 1.9 million. Their revenues are at 38%. And their revenues are, once they submit their expenses, they submit their expenses for their revenue, there's usually a 1 month lag. So their expenses are never, revenues will never be right at 50% in the middle of the year, because they're still submitting their grant expenses and getting reimbursed for them. And their revenue categories are shown below. Their intergovernmental services, 289%, they have one line item in there, and it's like a $5,000 budget. So it looks really inflated, but it's just a very small line item. And again, they rely very heavily on state and federal grants. So their intergovernmental revenues for 2023 is 26.9 million of their revenue budget. And their expenses are at 44%, and their labor, travel, capital, and other operating are shown below. They have budgeted 16.6 million for contractual social services. Right now, they show a deficit of 2.9 million. Their grant eligible expenses are incurred during the current month, and then they're reimbursed for it at the following month. And then approximately 1.6 million is spent monthly on those purchased social services. The operating tax levy transferred to the general fund is at exactly 50%, because we do a monthly entry for their tax levy amount, and their tax levy was 18 million. So 9 million has been transferred to them for their tax levy. And the airport fund, so their cash balance includes their own capital project funds. All of the projects that Jim was talking about are all within a separate fund than our general capital projects. So enterprise funds like airport, Parkview, and highway, that's besides the roads, because the roads are considered part of our regular capital projects. But if they have a highway building project, that would be in the highway capital project fund. So they combine those two funds together for their cash balance. And their revenues are at 50% of budget. And then the categories there below for the airport are shown. And the primary source of their operating revenue comes from the rental of the land and the buildings, and then the landing fees and the fuel flowage fees. Their expenses are at 73%. Is mostly due to their debt. So because of bonding for the T hangars, their debt payments are higher than they were when they budgeted them last August, because we didn't make the decision on what to borrow for until after the budget was adopted. So that will be something that we will be addressing and making an adjustment for in the future. So their debt principal payments, 2.4 million is budgeted for interest principal, and that whole payment has been paid. And then the interest part is 104,000, and 78,000 has been paid. The next payment will happen in October. So they're showing a deficit of 217,000, but a deficit of 722,000 was budgeted. The solid waste fund, they have 36.8 million in cash and investments. That includes taxable bonds, money market accounts, and their cash. Their taxable bonds, the 10.1 million has been set aside for the Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources, and they hold those in a separate investment account through US Bank. The revenue is at 52%.
Excuse me, is that with return on closures of the various?
The landfill, the long-term care.
Right.
Yeah. And their revenue is at 52%. Their different types of revenue sources are shown below. Their non-operating revenue is over because of the investment income. They're one of the departments that get allocated some of our general investment income based on their cash values.
I guess I don't understand why is solid waste with its own budget? I mean, why, you made a comment there that that's such a percent of the budget. Why is solid waste that listed in there?
Listed in the
I mean,
report.
isn't solid waste has its own taxing authority and everything else?
No, it's highway, airport, solid waste, and Parkview are enterprise funds or proprietary funds. And then there's everybody else is the general fund. So they have their own fund. Their own budget, their own. They
I
budget,
understand that part, but whatever, okay, go ahead.
Earlier, when I was talking about capital project funds for enterprise, I didn't include them because they don't do capital projects.
That's what my question
Yep,
is.
so they budget all of their capital in their operating capital outlay, even large projects that we would normally borrow for.
but highway and airport and Parkview can still have a capital outlay, just like solid waste. So it's, I'm still trying to figure out that why we do capital outlay and why we do capital projects. They're all the same, but I haven't gotten into that yet. First trying to figure out the fixing the CIP, and then we'll figure out the capital outlay and why we do that.
Their non-operating revenues are at 145% due to the investment income allocations. Their expenses are at 38%, and their categories are below. They did not have any non-operating expenses because in the past, the only thing they budgeted in there was their debt, and they haven't incurred any new debt, and they paid all of their debt off. Right now, they have a year-to-date surplus of $726,388, and a surplus of roughly 1.5 million was budgeted for the year. In the Parkview, their cash and investment balance is at 8.1 million, which includes some from the capital projects. So they have a few capital projects open. They have the ancillary building. There's a couple other ones on the capital project status report. So they have balances in a capital project that's specific for Parkview, and then they have their own fund balances. And their revenues are at 48%. The categories are listed below. Their non-operating revenues include non-operating grant revenue, miscellaneous revenue, and the tax levy transferred in. So they're also transferred in a tax levy every month. Their expenses are at 58%. And the categories are shown at the top of page 5, labor 39%, travel 21%, capital 5%, other operating 41%, and the non-operating is at 100%. So the non-operating is the other transfers out makes up the non-operating, which was our transfer from Parkview to the Spirit Fund. That's 8.6 million. Parkview also has a year-to-date deficit of 8.1 million. That is due to that transfer out. Last year they had the surplus because we transferred money into their fund from Spirit Fund, from the ARPA fund. So that deficit is all related to that transfer. But they had the surplus at the end, so as their operating position is equal from last year's
It's not
transfer
that
in.
change.
Yeah.
But the surplus was put in from last year from the general fund,
No, it was from ARPA. Okay.
ARPA,
So
so,
ARPA had to go in 22.
so they're
It
still
came
in the
back out.
red, right? Because they're,
If you run their income statement, they're in the red. If you look at their,
cause the ARPA fund prop them up to their, where they should be. Okay.
they're in the red for their operating.
Then their continued work with the state in the offset funds that each one of the healthcare facilities in the state for each county that has a healthcare facility in the state member themselves in with the state money. And they get a certain amount back at the end of the year for their losses. So they see, and I think it was like $2,000 this year or something, or I'm sorry, 2 million this year. That they received into.
So they've received an additional 2 million, but there's still 1 million in the red. So that's 3 million in the red if they didn't receive the state funds. Is that what you're saying?
No, that's not what I'm saying.
And you jumped in.
They get reimbursed, just like DHS gets reimbursed for getting grants or gets revenue from the state and the federal government, so I think Supervisor Cox is saying they get reimbursed for 2 million for taking care of other people from other counties or states or so forth. So that's part of their revenue is what's being budgeted. But yes, if you want to take out the ARPA money that was transferred to them, yes, they're 1 million in the red.
Thank you.
And this year, they're gonna look like they're 10 million in the red, but they're really, when you pull the ARPA money out. Hopefully they're not in the red, but budgeted, I think we budgeted in the red.
They already budgeted 2 million, but
Yeah.
they are serving a surplus as of now. So if they continue to go on the same path that they're going, they're gonna make about $1 million this year.
Okay.
And the projection was to lose $2 million. So
Well, that's good.
That's
they're gonna be way
That's a
ahead.
positive thing. So
Right.
Yeah,
that's good to know. Thank you, because I know you're on the park team.
Plus, not only that, we have the lowest tipping fees in the state of Wisconsin. I mean, you pay the least for your garbage haul of anybody in the state of Wisconsin.
Go ahead, John. He wants to stay below Allegheny County, I think, though, so.
Okay, so for the highway fund, their cash balance is at 5 million, which includes 1.2 million from the highway capital project fund. They also have a couple of projects that are specific to the highway and not the road projects that stay in their capital project fund. Their revenues are at 37% of the annual budget and the categories are below. You'll see the public services are at 959%, but that is only 1% of their whole revenue budget. So again, another small line item that they just received more money in than they originally budgeted. Their investment income is on earnings for general investing is at 157%. Their miscellaneous revenues are at a negative 47%, and that's the way they record their contra revenue for allocations for county furnished materials. So it looks a little odd on their income statement, but it's just the way they have to account for it, for their materials. Total expenses for them at the end of June are 41%, and their categories are below. You'll see that their travel is over budget, and we have informed them that there will be a budget amendment needing to be prepared to correct that. Their debt interest payments are what is all in the non-operating expense category. And for their interest payments, 9,100 was budgeted, and 4,986 have been incurred to date, and the final debt payment later in the year will put there at 100%. They're showing a deficit of $364,496. They did budget a surplus of $424,028. Most of that is due to their state reimbursements. Again, a month or two late to get reimbursed from the state of Wisconsin. So that finishes up our enterprise funds, and then we go into our self-insurance type funds, general services. So that's our printing and our mail division. They have a cash balance of 250,000. Their revenues are at 35% of the budget, but the category showing below that. And their expenses are at 37%. That's also showing below. Their labor is right where it should be at 50%. They did just refill that position down in that department, so they're staffed. And they budgeted a deficit of $6,414. They're showing a deficit, and the surplus of $5,572 is budgeted, which would increase their fund balance.
Is there a boy there?
No.
Okay.
any surplus or deficit in their fund just goes back into the fund balance. Workers' compensation, their cash balance is just over 3 million. They carry a large cash balance in order to cover unreported and unpaid claims that Winnebago could be liable for in the future. Their revenues are at 48%. Their expenses are at 66%. We have claim payments paid out of $342,701. And they were budgeted at $556,348. They're showing a deficit at the end of the year of $385,833. But a deficit of $462,948 was budgeted, which is covered by a reduction in fund balance. And because our fund balance was so high, we did budget a deficit in order to keep the costs down to each of the, to ourselves for covering workers' comp for employees. Property and liability is another fund that is self-monitored. The cash balance is $574,042. Also carrying a large cash balance to cover unexpected claims that could happen in the future. The revenues are at 50%. Expenses are at 88%. So the property and liability insurance claims have been paid out at $953,379, but they're budgeted at $808,200. Their deficit at the end of the month for June was $375,514, and a surplus of $105,000 was budgeted. The self-funded health insurance has a larger cash balance of almost 8.3 million. The revenues were recorded at 50%. And the expenses are at 48%. Expenses represent payments made for claims and administrative fees. Claim payments paid out for the year are at roughly 7.8 million, budgeted at 15.5 million. The deficit that they're showing right now is 15,259. A deficit of $917,135 was budgeted. Again, we had such a healthy fund balance that we didn't increase any of the premiums, so we anticipated drawing it down close to $1 million to keep those costs where they were. And then the self-funded dental insurance, the cash balance is $849,002. Dental insurance revenues are reported at 49%, and that comes from premiums paid by employees and the county's share of dental insurance coverage. Expenses are 49% of the annual budget. Claim payments are currently at $390,512, and they were budgeted at $802,642. As of mid-year, they're showing a surplus of $9,154, and the surplus was budgeted at $10,623. That covers all of our funds and their financial statuses, and then we'll go into the contingency funds. So we budget $300,000 in contingency every year to cover small amounts of amendments that departments need. And our balance right now is $244,167. And if you look on the following page, page 9, that shows you what each of the usages were for the contingency fund. Parks Expo had some tables and chairs they replaced for $15,000 when the limit was still $15,000. The highway had a small amount of purchasing a P1 player for the monitor for the employees' daily tasks. Our finance department, HR, used $15,000 to cover Munis ERP financial software PACE training for upgrade. And we also finance used $23,000 for the debt book software, so we could properly account for our leases for the audit.
Where are you finding it?
Page 9.
Page 9?
Page 9.
Yeah.
Right. Did you not get it? Yeah. Okay. That's valid. And then the salary contingency was budgeted at 2 million. That's the amount that we budgeted to handle all the wage adjustments that we put into place this year. Nothing's been moved at this point. The plan is to wait till the end of the year and make adjustments needed for each department. Some departments may be able to absorb the wage adjustments, while other departments may need some of those funds. So those will sit there until they're needed. And then investments, the balance at market for June 30th is 175.1 million. Whereas last year at this time, it was 138.2 million. So we definitely have increased our investment balances in the last year. And then as far as interest earned, so far, for the mid-year, we have earned 2.8 million, and last year we were at 2.4. And Paul will get into that when we get further back into his investment pages. I can do Jonathan. Okay. So we talked about page 9, the contingency. On page 10 is our general fund uses. At the top, you'll see all of most of the categories that make up the general fund. They're not all in there because there are other things that are not specific for departments. But we have 51.5 million is our audited balance as of the end of 2022. And then public health and scholarship boat launch are all shown there as well. So for the general fund, for unassigned general fund, the first use of that 51 million was the amount that we needed to balance the budget, which on our significant information page on the budget book, it was 6,322,000. So if you look across all of those, 5.4 is unassigned, 800 was of public health, 8,300 was scholarship, and then 26,400, $10 was property lister. That whole, all those amounts equal what we used to balance the budget last year. So that's the first drawdown of our 51.5 million audited amounts. And then we get into our year-end transactions that also utilize that money. That's type 1 carryovers. So any budget carryovers that are type 1, meaning they have a contract. They have a contract in place, which most of them are land and water. And then type 2 carryovers is anything that was presented to you in March to approve that were not contracted. Then we also have any purchase orders that are open at the end of the year that carry over. They bring in a revised budget into our financial software, and that also draws down the general fund balance. And then the shelter care building purchase, that was 1 million of it. And then the DHS chiller replacement was 180. And then everything listed in February is everything that was approved in the resolution for the capital improvement plan. I did roll up all the road projects together instead of having 30 different items. I rolled up a few together. So all the road projects were close to 4.6. A couple of the facilities project was 737,000. And then Parkview had a fire alarm, the highway building, parks, Walk Creek Dam repairs, the sheriff capital projects, that were 2 of them, I believe. And UW Oshkosh Dock Cities rolled up together, airports, and then the Oshkosh elevator repairs. And then the redundant fiber loop also had the $542,000, 600 transfer in. Public health received a grant. And when it's a grant that they receive for a staff that's already been budgeted for, we actually show it as an increase to the fund balance because we're giving that, they're putting in a revenue budget that they've already put in their labor expense in the adopted budget. And then Parkview water heaters, they requested some additional funding in April for 30,500. The elevator controls and modifications at Oshkosh Human Services were 48,000. And then there's that $22 million transfer out of the general fund into the spirit fund. And the reason that the beginning balance was 51.5 was because at the end of 2022, they got that 22 million transferred in. Any questions on any of those? scholarship fund. So this is just a snapshot of where we're at with what money is left in the scholarship fund in order to provide scholarships to students. Last year, we did not give it a tax levy. And the plan was to draw it down, and keep continuing to offer scholarships and continue to have the conversation on if we're gonna do a tax levy for it. Or if it's just going to be an expense that's part of our levy. And then pages 12 to 22 are every department's where they're at between revenue and the expense categories. Because when we talk about the general fund, that's going to be probably 30 of these departments here. So we won't go through every one of them. But you will see that it's got an original budget for each department, a revised, the actuals, and then what's remaining in the percent of where they're at. And then if you see any red unassigned fund balance applied, that means that when we did the budget for 2023, that we granted them an expense that was outside of their normal scope of expenses. And so we used unassigned fund balance to cover that expense.
All right, so page 27 is just 27, 28, 29 are just 3 pages on the investment portfolio. Carol had said the balance is 175 million. That includes the money market accounts. So the actual investment account started at the beginning of the year at $110 million. And at the end of 6/30, it's at $119 million. We put in a can't even read my own thing. Cash flow for the next 7 years is looking at 116 million. What it was at the end of 2022, cash flow at the end of June is 128 million. So that is just a reflection that we are getting a lot better interest rates. And we're getting longer term things, as you can see by the orange and the blue. What I was trying to do is try to get myself at the 3 million level as my baseline going out for the period of time. I've got a couple of low spots yet, but right now, I'm kind of thinking, and I got the investment portfolio where I think I want it for right now. And waiting to see what interest rates are going to do going forward. And right now we have cash flow that is starting to come down. They're paying a lot more coming up. So I want to make sure we have cash on hand to be able to take care of that. So the money markets right now are at 5.1 or over 5. We're getting on CDs right now. They're sending me around 5.25 for that little bit of difference. I want to make sure we have cash on hand until we start getting new payments in 2024 for taxes. So then the next page of 28 is just a breakdown of the portfolio. Shows you that we have municipals and bonds and so forth and so on, which you can look at and see. That's, I want to get a little better split. We're a little heavy in certain areas of that. And then the chart to the right basically is the money market, which is basically trying to show you that I'm trying to make sure I get into more than one bank. Associated Bank, of course, is our biggest bank. They hold our trust and our checking account and money market account. But I've been trying to move money to F&M Merchant and Nicolay. I just moved some money to. So that's just trying to show you I'm trying to get multiple banks. They are fully collateralized or have letters of credit on all of the money market accounts. And so we are insured at this point for everything. And the last thing is I was approached by Associated Bank basically on whether I would be interested in letting them be an investment advisor for me. So I wanted to just throw that out to the committee as a potential future discussion. Right now, Dana Investments is managing about five and a half million of the portfolio. I'm managing the other 105 million of that portfolio. I'm not sure I am doing it justice with the time I'm putting into it, or I have, but I'm not doing the other things I want to get done. So right now, we are paying them a 3%, 3 basis point fee on the portfolio. They said they would do the full portfolio starting at 8% basis points, but of course, over the next year, then they want to go to like 10, and then the next year 12, and then the next year 16. So they want to do that. So I don't know. I just wanted to throw it out there for the committee as a future topic of discussion on your thoughts on that, about potentially letting them help me with the portfolio or not. I'm more worried about if something goes bad, can I get rid of it? They can, because they've got an access to so many other different avenues than I do, but right now with our portfolio, everything is pretty much AAA or AA, so I don't see things going bad. I mean, so, just, I want to let you know they approached me, and that is a possibility I might want to discuss with you guys later.
And if you look at, the United States was just lowered to a AA plus. So if it's good enough for the United States to have AA plus, I guess we don't have a AAA no more. So, you know, if that's not that bad, I don't think the country's in that bad a shape.
Okay. That's my report. Thank you.
Both of you, thank you very much.
Thank you. Welcome.
That concludes our report from the finance department. We'll go on to our first resolution, which there are 2 of them for Doug Buren. Doug?
Thank you.
The first one is a grant for $421,600 from the Wisconsin Department of Health Services. Could you give us a little insight to that?
Yep. A little less than a year ago, the health department started a lead abatement program. That program is utilizing funds from DHS and HUD primarily to address homes of lead poisoned children. These funds primarily go to abate the lead hazards that are found in these homes, to make those homes safer for the kids that are living in them, and then for future generations of children that live in them. And Scott Fisher, the person that we hired to do this work, coordinating our program, was able to identify some additional projects that we could submit for some additional funding in this first year of this project. And so we're just looking to increase the number of projects that we can complete yet this fiscal cycle.
I'd like to move to approve the resolution, authorize acceptance of the $421,600 grant.
Thank you, Betsy. Second? Anybody for a second? Thanks, Steve. Discussion? Any discussion, folks? We want to vote then.
I,
Aye.
Aye. 5-0 on that. 4-0. I'm sorry, 4-0. The second one that you have is the authorization acceptance of an $80,083 grant from the Department of Health Services as well. This is on the vending machine.
Sure, thank you. Yep, the State Department of Health had offered an opportunity for communities to expand access of Narcan and fentanyl test strips primarily, so that we can help reduce more overdose deaths in our communities due to opioids. Madeline Brager is with me today to answer any specific questions you might have about that. We did provide a presentation to the Board of Health. We also provided a presentation to the Judicial and Public Safety Committee, just to make sure that they had a good understanding of what this project is. We do have some handouts here if you're interested, just with this, you know, the presentation, a PowerPoint presentation to help you with any questions you might have as this gets debated. The vending machines, we have actually applied for a larger grant, but there was so much interest statewide that they reduced many of the awards to try to spread the resources as much as possible across the state. The funding this funding will cover the costs for the purchase and installation and supplies that would go into 2 vending machines. These are climate controlled. They'll be placed outside. One would be at this building in the courtyard, essentially, just 50 feet down the street here. The second would be placed on the outside of the Human Services building in Neenah to increase our capacity to provide those resources up there. Currently, we're the largest distributor of Narcan to the public in Winnebago County. The health department is, but we only offer that service currently through the Oshkosh office, not in the Neenah office. And so it's a priority for us to help increase access to resources in Neenah, and we'll maintain that equipment up there along with our office up there and then the Human Services building. So just looking for your acceptance of the transfer of the grant funds so that we can take this to county board and hopefully get started on that project.
I'll move resolution 6, authorizing acceptance of $80,083 grant from the Wisconsin Department of Health Services for Public Health, harm reduction, vending machine distribution, Narcan fentanyl test strips.
Second. Thank you. Don, second. We have questions?
Yes. So how do these machines work and who and?
Yeah, I'll let Madeline knows the details better than I do, so there's no point in Colt saying it, so I'll let you go ahead.
Yep, so how it's gonna work is the client is either going to call or do an in-person visit here at the health department with our harm reduction program coordinator during the office hours of 8 to 4. They're gonna do a needs intake with them to determine what type of resources, whether that's Narcan, fentanyl test strips. Doing this intake will help allow us to limit the number of supplies we can access over a period of time with this vending machine. And what they'll get is a PIN. So that PIN is gonna allow that person to go outside of business hours on a weekend for a certain duration of time and input that PIN and receive their supplies. And so if they are not able to come during the office hours to obtain that PIN, they're gonna be able to call the Winnebago County Crisis to obtain that PIN number as well for the same process. So with that PIN, it allows us to limit the amount of supplies and the duration so we get access. So whether that's a week or month, and that's still part of the anticipated process, still planning and stuff. So that would allow that person to get their supplies and also have expanded hours. And so that would be here at CAB or in the courtyard and at which we currently don't have access to a lot of the service out there right now. So
Yeah, I think the key here is that, anybody that wants to access this machine really needs to have a contact with us first to determine what that need is. It's also an opportunity for us to maintain or continue that relationship, as they navigate, their addiction and their recovery process. It allows us to connect them to other resources and, hopefully help them along that journey while, being able to access what they need more easily than we offer currently right now. We don't have any other community partners that hand out fentanyl test strips or Narcan at this point in time.
I understand how this works, but, what's your data to back this up that this actually works? I mean, or have we looked at other people that have already implemented this, you know, does it actually work? Because it seems. I mean, you're looking at someone who is an addict to begin with, right? So they have a drug that they don't know if it's got fentanyl in it or not, correct? So that's what the strip is for.
Mhm.
I'm a non-drug user, so yeah, I'm just gonna you can walk me through this a little bit. So they will then pick up a phone, call, or walk in, talk to someone from 8 to 4, right? Because it's not after hours, correct? And then they'll say, okay, I'm an addict, I may have a drug, or I may be overdosing, and I need a code.
So the placement, the availability of the Narcan and fentanyl test strips is, you know, with the understanding that a person is using substances. This is not a crisis emergency response type of situation. It's to have access and possession of Narcan and fentanyl test strips for when they're needed. The Narcan may or may not actually be in possession of the substance user. Typically, a substance user that is overdosed is not going to be able to administer Narcan on themselves.
That's what I thought. That's why I'm confused on if you're calling. That's why I guess I'm asking these questions is because, so you're in an overdose situation, you're the one with the code.
Yeah.
So how
that's
is someone going to use the Narcan that's in there in order to administer himself? They can't. So my question is, why is that in there? So, I mean, I get the test strips completely because, you know, and then you're saying that it's what you will have like one access point a week. Is that kind of?
We haven't determined like what those timeframes look like, and that's something that we're considering, like best practices and what we can learn from others as well.
And what have we learned from others? Because, you know, that was the first question I asked was, you know, what's the data from prior use of doing this? Other counties, I'm assuming, have used this, or other municipalities? You know, what's the success rate that they've been using and so forth. I'd like to have all that information before I, you know. And what does the law enforcement think of this?
Yeah, so I think those are all good questions, and I think there is other counties that we have looked to for this, Green Lake and Marinette are just two of them. I've been on a few calls also already, with this. They're gonna start developing a community of practice for all the other people that are gonna be awarded this, and everybody's kind of in that same boat right now. How do we best collect, data? What does that look like from previous people? There's a new report that came out this week for the National Mental Health Coalition Wellbeing, where they submitted a harm reduction best practices, which does include a lot of different data points from across the country, actually places that have done this, and includes some local examples and also national.
What are those numbers? So,
I mean, I don't have those.
and then compared to Winnebago, so we're our own entity here. I mean, I don't want to see numbers from San Francisco, you know what I mean? Because it's not the same. So, you know, when can we see those numbers? Because I don't want to add something that could potentially, you know, bring more people into an area that didn't have any issues, and now, you know, we're seeing a lot more people congregate or so forth. I get the idea of making that phone call in and being able to grab that person and hopefully help them with recovery and getting through a program. But, you know, there's a lot of other things that are involved in this. You know, that's right next to a YMCA, the one in Neenah. You know, is this going to potentially bring people who are doing a lot more illegal substances to an area to test, and it's right next to a YMCA and a church where they have kids out all the time? You know, that's what I'm thinking when I think of a vending machine out. So, so that's concerning for me, and I want to know actual data that can support this, that is from actual communities that are similar to us like this. And I would love to hear a little more from, like I said, law enforcement, you know, what do the Neenah PDA mean? You know, what about the Winnebago, you know, Sheriff's Department, you know, what do they think? Do they think this is gonna be something that they could work with also? Those are just some basic questions, and I know I'm not trying to rain on your parade, I just, you know, I think they're important for the communities that we're gonna be putting these into.
Do you have
So that's
something?
the NACO conference, and they actually didn't even have a vending machine there, they just had a cabinet where it was self-service, so if somebody needed it, they could just open the door, take what they needed. And I said, well, what stops somebody from just emptying the cabinet? He goes, they actually is like a code amongst people that use this stuff, that they know it's there to help somebody and save their life, so they're not just gonna come there and empty the cabinet. It's there for somebody that is basically in need of it, and somebody will access it. They can put a camera over it, that, you know, if you wanted to monitor it. But his opinion was that all the places that he sold to never had a problem with anybody just coming with a grocery bag and emptying everything out of the cabinet.
Right, and that's not my concern. I like the idea of having to call in, because for me, I think that is like the most important part about this, is that you're finding people who are doing illegal substances and you can help them. To me, that is the most important part. I'm just not a big fan of my head, I'm thinking this big vending machine and you know, that one I'm not too thrilled with, but I like the other idea, but you know.
Yeah,
So,
See, the vending machine requires a PIN number.
right, I
in order
understand
to
that.
Access. what's
They have to
inside,
call,
And they have to have
right,
a connection to get the PIN number.
right.
We don't expect most people to call. I mean, that is, you know, we expect that to probably be the least common way that we're contacted for use of the vending machine. Most, right now, we only distribute Narcan in person. We meet with every client that comes in to assess their needs. If they live in the Neenah area, this would be a great way for us to be able to increase their access, so they don't have to travel to Oshkosh in order to get fentanyl test strips or the Narcan. So it increases accessibility, and both of these products are really preventive, and there's a lot of evidence that helps show that they do help prevent overdoses and overdose deaths as a result. The machine, people can call if they just can't come down to see us. We really prefer to see them in person, so that we can make sure that we connect them with the resources that are really most appropriate for them.
But you just said that, you have data that shows that this correlates, this vending machine, with bringing down overdose stuff. So it's not just the test strips, but do the vending machines actually do have that data? Because that's the data I'm asking for.
Yeah, so there's two pieces of data that would, you know, really be the most supportive here. One is, if you increase the availability of Narcan and fentanyl test strips, do you reduce overdose deaths? The answer to that is yes, and there's plenty of data to support that. The second would be, you know, in communities that have placed these vending machines, are they being accessed? Have they been able to measure, a reduce in overdoses? And there is evidence to support that, but because the vending machine isn't the only access point for those materials in a community, it's hard to directly correlate or associate the reductions in overdoses to a vending machine. We have looked at other communities and have asked a lot of questions. The grant was put out because it is an emerging practice that's has very positive outcomes in other communities. Some of this money is federal, so this is something that we're likely to see in many communities, not just across Wisconsin, but across the whole country.
But I would think that being able to track with a vending machine would be much easier with data than it would be just, I mean, I understand, obviously, fentanyl strips and Narcan in the community to help people, obviously, hopefully, is reducing overdose. I mean, that is, I mean, we want that, but I'm asking about the vending machines in particular, only because those should be easier to track than anything, because there's codes and there's specific stuff. So, that's the information I want. I understand that the strips and so forth are obviously going to help with overdoses, because it's going to stop someone from wanting to take something if they see fentanyl in their substance, as opposed to, but anyway, I'll let someone else ask questions.
Yeah, I could just maybe just one more final piece. I mean, in the interest in even applying for these funds, we've reviewed a lot of data to make sure that this is a good investment for us. We didn't bring, any studies or details here today. I mean, we, made the decision to apply for the grant because we did feel based on, what's available, where we are in our community's journey, reducing overdose deaths, that this was an appropriate time and a really good investment for our community to help prevent future deaths. And we'd be happy to email you, copies of studies where if you want to look at the actual, details of that we use to help make these decisions. Happy to share that. We just didn't bring it to this.
Do you have a question, sir?
Yes, currently, can they get this stuff anonymously?
It's all anonymous.
So when the sheriff provides an RCAN, is that anonymous?
The sheriff's department, and please correct me if I'm wrong here, they carry Narcan to administer in an emergency situation. They don't actually give it out to community members.
Right.
Jail setting, jail setting upon exit. We survey.
So
Okay.
only in the, like, if you're on a call, you don't have it?
We have it, our officers carry because the intensity of drugs is amplified so much with fentanyl. Is that we've seen our applications go from like where we before we would do like 1 or maybe 2 doses of Narcan to revive somebody. We've gone as high as up to 8. To try to revive people. So the potency of fentanyl has really changed that dynamics. So yeah, but when we have people in jail, we ask them to self-identify if they have drug problems. And upon their exit, if they stay within jail, we actually try to connect them to, we have a drug, basically an addiction counselor in there. They'll actually do a direct referral to human services, to their treatment program. It's part of our solutions recovery where we do the Vivitrol, where we have a warm handoff to a peer counseling support coach through solutions recovery. And we also do offer Narcan to people upon their release. So from the perspective of, you would ask, does, the sheriff's office support the harm reduction pillar of the drug initiative that's currently happening nationwide? Yes, it's always a delicate balancing act. So, are we reducing harm or are we actually enabling drug addicts? So that's always a tight line to walk. So we're full in with the harm reduction pillar, obviously with the Vivitrol and by handing out Narcan. Is Sheriff Watts in favor of putting like a vending machine like this in the sheriff's office lobby? No. We still prefer the hand-to-hand, we're interacting with people that we're giving the Narcan to.
So sheriff's department in favor of putting these machines here in Neenah?
We support greater access. Now, as to where the actual buildings are, I think that it's important to get buy-in from the people where the vending machines are going to be located, because the concern of foot traffic from our perspective is, and we've had overdoses in our lobby bathroom. Okay, where people have met up there and they've actually overdosed, so we've had to Narcan people that came from our bathroom. The sheriff's office bathroom, people are overdosing. Isn't that crazy? So it's like, if we're gonna give out Narcan, we want it to be a warm handoff to where we're able to either access resources for people or else basically supervise that delivery. Now, what Director Gearin is speaking to, I don't know the logistics of it with how that's all gonna work, but having to assign a PIN number where you've actually given somebody some instructions, some advice, how to access resources, that goes towards trying to get them help, not just facilitating their addiction.
Is it anonymous? So we don't actually get the names and we can't actually, it's not a warm, as they're saying, it's not a warm send off. It's anonymous, so they just do it. So we're not actually going to be able to help them.
It depends. I mean, we don't require anyone to identify themselves to avail themselves of any of these services. If they wish to identify themselves and we can provide a warm handoff to another community organization or service, you certainly can do that. For tracking purposes and for access to the program, we don't require it because we don't want anyone to feel that they can't access services because of a stigma and, being intimidated by giving their name. But we do collect information about where people live, how old they are. There's a lot of information that we do collect to help us understand how the program's working.
I get that, but that doesn't really help the person. So it feels like this is just a Band-Aid on an issue that we're not being able to help them with. I mean, I feel like, is there this money that, I get that this grant is specifically for this, but I just feel like this is not the best way to help someone who is in the middle of, not non-recovery, who needs recovery. I mean, this to me feels like, just some sort of Band-Aid that's gonna cause an issue for where the vending machine is gonna be located. So I don't know if I support this or not, so,
In order to access the vending machine, they have to contact us for prices first.
yeah, but they don't have to give you your name, so you're not, there's no recovery involved in this.
It depends on what they're looking for. It's really up to them and where they are and what they're ready for. You know, we try to meet people where they're at, keep them safe until, you know, they're ready to, you know, make further decisions about accessing resources for recovery. This, I mean, in addition to the fentanyl test strips and the Narcan, you know, we'll have access to, you know, resources right in the machine, you know, the We Heart You cards, places they can call for help. You know, and that's, but they can access that machine if they do call the crisis line. But that's really probably the least common way we would anticipate this being used. It really is to help with the availability of Narcan and fentanyl test strips. Because we're only one location and we have limited hours, this really helps expand access.
Doug,
Yes.
let me just add that, the Board of Health committee vote was 7-0.
Right, I read that.
So you know.
I read that.
Did you have another question?
Yeah, when they contact you for these supplies, are you actively trying to direct them to help?
As much as we can, right?
We'll ask the question.
We have, whenever our harm reduction coordinator meets with anyone that's coming in for any of our supplies, there's a discussion that occurs that helps establish where they're at, what they're ready for. Helps us collect information about them, and you know it also helps develop a relationship. Our harm reduction coordinator may be the only person that they can actually talk to about their addiction, you know, and not feel stigmatized, and be able to really freely share what the situation is that they're going through, and that helps us help them.
Okay,
Just one more comment. If they do call you, you can always backtrack that phone number. You can always look that up. And they must be functioning because they must be paying a cell phone bill or have access to a communication. So if I would call you and you thought that I really needed help, you could look up my number, you could find me. I mean, you could call me, I'll find your cell phone. I can basically go online, type that phone number in and I will locate you. So if you really think that person is in dire need of help, and even though he didn't ask you for help, you could locate him and forcibly help him. I mean, if they wanted help, they'd ask for it, but you could find that person if you wanted to by them contacting you.
Yeah, I mean, I'm assuming if we needed to for some reason, like there was damage to the machine or something, but I mean, you could be the brother or the father, you know, or the cousin of someone in your household or a friend that is using substances and you want to have Narcan available just in case, right? Or the fentanyl test strips available just in case. They didn't even call, a family member or household member called so that, yeah, there's something there in case we need it.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, if I had a son or daughter that was using that and, you know, I had access to that and I had that at home, why wouldn't I want to be able to help them? And then, you know, I was just in Austin, there's hundreds of homeless people. Every one of them have family that gave up on them. You know, they're living in the street. So if I had a brother or sister or mother or father that was willing to do that, you know, they're still working with that. That person isn't lost. You know, when they're living in this alleys in the street and you walk down the street and it smells like urine, you know, nobody wants to live like that. So whatever we can do to help them, I'm in full support of it.
Just to rebut what you said, you say that they've been given up on. That's not true. That's a very broad statement. Well, I'm gonna clarify this because my niece is a recovering addict. And I tried everything I could to help her, and you can't force a person who is in the midst of this for recovery. You can't do any of that. You can help them as much as you can, but it wasn't that people give up on them. It's just sometimes they choose to be like that. and forcing them. And then calling them and trying to force them in it does not work.
Okay,
I mean,
okay.
are you,
I
okay,
can understand all that, but let's stick to whether we're gonna have a vote here or we're gonna have a debate. All right. We all done with the discussion? Can we vote?
nay,
I,
Aye. It's 3-1.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Doug. Eric and Ms. Bremer. Good morning. This is a resolution to authorize Winnebago County Emergency Management to accept the donation of a mobile morgue. This was interesting. Just give us the bits and pieces.
Sure, Cheryl's here with me today as well, so, as a region, obviously with the topic that the health department just talked about, as a focus, we have, seen that we have a storage capacity issue within the county and the region. We're addressing that on a day-to-day basis with the, permanent morgue project that you guys have approved previously, for Cheryl's office. But with large events, whether it be EAA or a concert or a packed game, mass casualty incidents throughout the community and throughout the country are becoming an increasing problem. This tool that we are accepting is mobile, so we would be able to take it to a scene and secure it. And have some additional storage capacity for decedents at the time of one of those mass casualty incidents. This is something that we don't have currently as an asset in the region. The Fox Valley HERC, which I'm a member of, Doug is also on their board, serves 8 counties within the region, and they have asked us to take ownership of this, so we will own it. And it would be available as a regional asset as requested by other counties, but as a tool for us to have within the region.
I'll just add that, just so there's no misconception about it, it's not a trailer or a secure type of thing. It looks more like a linen cart that you would find in a hospital or a nursing home with sides that come down and zip that are canvas, but there is cooling capabilities. So it's not something, you know what I mean, that would be used on could be a permanent type solution. It would be a very short term solution, so.
I like the move to approve and the authorization of the Winnebago Emergency Management Department to accept the donation.
Any seconds?
I'll second.
Okay. Done. Yeah,
my question would be, where are you gonna store it and how are you gonna move it?
So, the unit we are getting, comes on trolleys. It's, similar to, like, I would say, like part of chairs that you would move, push around. It's on wheels. Currently would be at one of the facilities departments. When Cheryl's morgue is constructed, it'll be stored there. So easy to move. It's on caster wheels, so easy to push around, load into a truck, to move, if needed, but also fairly compact for storage.
And if other counties use that, would they be charged? I mean, because it's gonna cost us money for storage and maintenance on it. So if we're gonna store this and other counties are gonna come and use it for free, it's kind of like pretty nice if Fond du Lac County needs a temporary morgue and they just come to Winnebago and we stored this for 3 years, never used it, and we maintained it, because I'm sure the cooling system is very expensive if the Freon leaks out of it or the compressor needs to be rebuilt. And they can just, because it's regional, just use this for free. So will there be a charge if another county wants to use it? Because there's a cost to us to having this. You know, we may own it, but that building isn't free, you know, and
From December 2021 until the middle of July of 2022, we borrowed a trailer for this purpose from a different county. I believe we were only charged for transportation and to clean it and sanitize it before return. So as counties, in Cheryl's office and my office, we work very closely together. I am working with the HERC to develop a kind of policy that will address, you know, damage, usage, and transportation. We haven't gone through all those details, and I haven't had time to review that with Mayor and Ian yet, but that will be something that's in process. The maintenance that you touched on too, does have a compressor, like a generator compressor unit for the cooling. I've worked with Mike, and Mike's staff will test that and run that monthly like they do the rest of the generators.
Any questions?
I,
I,
Aye, 4-0. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm supposed to be at school at 11 o'clock, so I might have to leave early.
I'm supposed to be at Christine and at 11, so I could wait.
Bob,
yes, sir.
we've got your resolution here on Pioneer Road and Highway T. Is Mike available as well?
Sit down, Mike. I'll try to be as brief as I can with this. This project, the estimate that we originally used for this was from 2017, 2018, roughly. Construction was in 2022, so we were using an estimate that was 4 years old moving into this. We ran into soil borings were done as part of the project. We ran into poor soils. When you over excavate these areas, you have to fill them in with aggregate. So once you excavate this out, you put in aggregate. At that point, we're using a soil stabilization, a geogrid we add with this to help out for future. You know, fuel prices were 25 to 30% up. Asphalt prices were 25 to 30% higher. Everything fell against us with this project. We had one contractor that bid this project. So did we get the best price out there? Probably not real competitive. We had DNR wetland permits that we were on the cuff of losing our permit with this if we push this off a year. We move forward with this project. Obviously with everything that just, you know, fell in with COVID and all this, it was a mix of every bad thing you could think of with this project. Obviously left us over budget. We ran into, I believe the last day we were working out there, it snowed. We had about 2 or 3 inches of snow. We were paving asphalt to seal this up, knowing we're gonna come back this year to start this. So it brings us to today. We worked with finance with this. There were some areas where there was money available in there to make this project finish up. We only have like 300-400 feet on each section of this road to finish. It's not a lot to finish. We just ran out of time. I mean, like I said, you know, it's not, you know, we could make, you know, blame it on everybody out there. It's just circumstances that came up that we couldn't avoid. So here we are today asking for this money. You know, Mike, you want to touch on some of this money is coming from some courthouse masonry, Nina Human Services, and then some highway masonry projects.
The courthouse masonry project came in significantly under budget. So that money was left over in the project fund, and that's part of the process that Paul is addressing with where funds are with capital projects when they come in under budget. The past practice is they just park park the funds in that project, and then they get reallocated to another capital project down the road. Neenah Human Services roof came in significantly over budget. We ran into the same problems that Bob had. Materials for roofing went considerably higher than when we had the estimate. So, that one came in over budget, and rather than coming back for more money for that project, we're gonna incorporate that into the projects that come with the facility condition assessment and prioritize that all there. We've made repairs to it that, we had some damage over the winter. I think we'll be able to go through another winter, without any significant issues. And then the highway masonry project was kind of running on a parallel path with their office remodeling, or reconfiguration, I should say. And that's going to be taken care of in the office reconfiguration project. So that project then is available to be reallocated. So that's where those funds are coming from.
I'd like to move to approve the resolution to authorize $917,217 to be added to the following projects.
Second.
Steve wants to second. It's open for discussion. Can I make a quick comment? You've got the first of asphalt on the intersection, is that correct?
It's a sacrificial just to cover up for winter.
All right, but it needs a second layer on the entire thing.
Correct, and it needs some excavation yet too.
The culvert, the 3-foot culvert you got down there, is that leading to something, or is it?
At the intersection?
Yeah.
Yes, so that curve, the old curve that was in there was excavated out. So all that will be shaped, and then will go into that culvert into that drainage ditch.
Are you planning on putting in a detention or retention pond?
Absolutely not. That is just gonna be a grass.
Run right on out into the culvert.
Yeah, I mean, it's not, it's right now, the way it's shaped is, I mean, it's not a detention pond or retention whatsoever. It just needs to be shaped. Once that gets shaped, it's just gonna be a grass waterway that just leads to that culvert.
So just surfacing and the shaping of the culvert ends and whatever that you have to do is gonna cost you $1.1 million.
Well, that was the original estimate from 2017.
I'm saying with all the adding and subtracting and whatever else. All of these add-ons of the masonry. With the Neenah Human Services, with the highway masonry. And the additional 125 from the budget. All of that comes to 1.1.
No,
And-
1.1 was the original budget that was authorized, 1.9 was actually has been spent to date. So that 1.9 is the whole road. What Bob is saying he still has yet to be done is 175,000 of future costs, which is part of the 917 being asked for. That should be on the chart.
And it'll be all done,
Page 2.
completed,
Correct.
and we're all through with Radke. Is that correct?
For this project.
For this,
For
yeah.
this project.
For anything else other than the boathouse? You're not gonna go back to him?
We are looking at ways that we can qualify contractors and comply with state law. If he is not a disbarred contractor, he's still eligible to bid on contracts. And unless we have a non-arbitrary and capricious policy and practice of disqualifying contractors, we may end up having to go back to work with them.
Well, we got more than enough evidence
I don't.
against them.
But it opens,
I mean, we got tons of evidence.
we've got there are things that you have to answer for, because if you disbar somebody, they're gonna say, how long am I disbarred for? And what do I have to do to get back onto the bidders list? So it's not like private industry where you can just pick and choose the bidders that you have. We have to comply with the state laws, and the state laws are in favor of the contractors.
Well, there should be some laws against them not fulfilling
Mike,
Yes.
their contracts.
Mike, you know the laws and you
Yeah.
know everything right down to the T as far as contractors, and who you can have. But you can almost say he's not gonna be in this kind of business again, because he is,
Yes.
siphoning off money here some way or another.
I mean, one thing is with these projects is when we award these contracts, we cannot determine or dictate means or methods. So when you might have 5 different contractors, 4 of those contractors will say, hey, this is how we start these projects and finish them. You may have one contractor that's like, go against the grain and not follow those rules. So it's very hard when you have a contract, because you really can't go in there and tell them, hey, you're doing this wrong. We can suggest, we'd like you to do it this way, but it's very hard at that point, once you have a contract with them, to tell them, hey, how to do your work. If you're doing it at your house, you can tell that person, hey, I want you to start with this and progress with that. It's hard on these projects. I mean, we can't dictate means or
Thank you, Bob.
methods.
I understand. Yes,
We have to agree to this, correct?
but
We don't have any choice, correct?
I mean, we're at the finish line. We're right there.
What would
Right at
happen
the
if we
finish.
don't?
I mean, we'll go back and rebid this out. In a short little, it probably cost us 5 times this for a contractor to come in and finish it. You know,
I'm ready.
we're all ready for a bit. You wanna,
I,
uh, 3-1. Hey. Thank you.
Thank you.
I have to leave. I'm sorry.
Can we hang together so we get,
I told him I wasn't,
let's try it.
I'm gonna miss my next meeting, but that's okay.
Let's try to get through this one. This is. Oh, where's Lindsay?
Oh, sorry, I jumped the gun. I'm in such a hurry, I'm trying to get you guys out of here, sorry. We can do a buy one, get one. I
This
know
is
nothing
about-
about wheelchairs, sorry.
This is a budget transfer, so go quick, it's $60,462
Yes.
for a wheelchair,
Yes,
please.
so we're looking into, one, we had some funds that were donated from a previous resident in, this amount of $60,462, for general use. We currently have a wheelchair bus that we use to transport our residents back and forth to medical appointments. That wheelchair van seats 8 people. It's not effective. So we would like to use the money to purchase a wheelchair van, just a single.
I like to
wheelchair
move to approve your purchase.
Second.
Okay, Don, second, Betsy is moved.
Just a comment, I'd like to just say that it's something you should have had 10 years ago. I'm really happy to see it come in there, and for taking residents places that are hard to get to. That bus is way too big. That's a 16-passenger bus, and it's an overkill for when you're only moving 1 or 2 people.
Yeah.
So I'm glad you got this, and it'll be put to good use.
Yeah.
Any other comments?
I
Aye. 4-0.
do it 2 hours for that.
Thank you. All right, guys, you're up.
Yes.
Beat that.
All in favor? Hello, I'm Chris Thompson, Chief Deputy for the Sheriff's Office. Also with me, I have Mike Seawald. He's Detective Lieutenant assigned to our Special Victims Unit. We are requesting a budget transfer of 21,258 from the General Contingency Fund to the Sheriff's Office budget to purchase an evidence trailer. So as a law enforcement agency, we would do asset seizures from criminals to try to take away some of their money, some of their goods that they had bought with illicit gains. So we were able to do that historically. And then in 2018, there was a statutory change. And now basically, before then, we would seize assets, we would get rid of them, and basically we would keep a portion of the money, and then most of the money would go to the school fund. Changes occurred in spring of 2018 to where now almost all the money goes to the school fund. So during that, accounting changes occurred to where the fund no longer carried over year to year with a rolling balance. It actually had to be then a budget transfer as a carryover. Our accountant at that time in 2018 missed it, so it just rolled over into the general fund. So the money's not lost. It does have rules as far as equitable sharing, how we can spend it. So the money that we're requesting was the balance when it went into the general fund. So we're seeking to purchase an evidence trailer. We've had a lot of high profile crimes from 2 different murder investigations. We just completed an officer involved shooting for the city of Oshkosh. And recently we just cracked a mini burglary ring where we had to collect over 1,000 pieces of evidence. So that evidence requires us to collect it, process it, inventory it. We have a portable evidence system that we can actually bring out to locations, barcode all the evidence, and then basically assemble it in this trailer before we bring it back to our regular evidence storage. So right now we don't have that capacity because an investigator will collect as much as they can put in their vehicle and then haul it back to the sheriff's department and process it. This way we can collect thousands of pieces of evidence.
I'd like to move to approve the budget transfer.
Second.
Just one question,
Yes,
where
sir.
will we be storing it?
At the sheriff's department, we have room. We are fans of trailers because our experience is this, anything with a motor takes a lot of maintenance, like you were referencing before. So it'll be parked in our garage. Lifespan, we expect it to be at least 25 years.
Let me mention something for you here. Your meeting with JPS
Yes, sir, 550.
50.
Yes, sir.
Didn't show up on the budget transfer.
I think it's because, yeah, so from a matter of transparency, the sheriff always insists that we go through committee of jurisdiction first, technically, because this isn't a resolution,
That's
it's
correct.
only a budget transfer. It really would have only had to go to this body, but from a transparency, we always like to go through our committee of venue. So we did that more as a courtesy than an actual requirement.
Yeah, we got you there, so.
Aye.
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 Thank you.
Laurel, thank you. Don. Got
My stuff's been rescheduled.
our discussion on personnel policy practices. That was something that I kind of stuck in here. But you received the recruitment and the hiring, equal opportunity employment from the personnel director's desk. I believe, or by Mary Ann, one of us, I got here, mine was Mary Ann. But it's all the same. When reading through it, it is not incorporating my sheet, which I gave you at the beginning of the. My sheet asked that we accept some policy, a policy that includes provides TO for organization chart for the purpose of that hire. An operational plan for the budgeting of whatever changes occur. A job description and position description with any duties that might transfer from other jobs for this job. Hiring practices. Or pardon me, the job must be posted And it should have a resume or an evaluation within the scope of the application taken for that job. And then any what we call ROI, return on investment, or impact statement that can go along with that job to let us know that it's worthwhile to hire. And when I state all of this in this sheet, we were looking at an innovative an innovative analyst. We were also looking at other different situations which came before it. I don't want to go into that detail. But I think that it's important to take what I just read you and incorporate it into this document that was given to us by personnel. In some way, we've got to know who we're hiring, who we're bringing into the organization. What's his resume, what he looks like, whether or not he's, worthy of the spot. Okay, we're doing it for everybody else. The personnel director had to do it. The administrative director had to do it. Okay. We even have done it for board members who come in and are appointed. Okay. They have to do it as far as making a resume or having an application filled out. This is why I want that in there. Yes.
So I guess I'm confused on what we're doing here. So the discussion was, is this what HR gave us this?
Right.
Right? And they're the ones doing, are they the ones doing?
This is the current
Right,
current
so-
procedure that.
I understand that. So are they doing, is this an HR brought this forward? Or you picked this out and now you're telling us that this is what you want to do in order to change it? Which that is.
Clearly, if you go through the one that HR has, it omits.
But I get what you're saying, because you want to put this stuff into there. I understand that's what your objective is. But my question is, so this is something that you brought forward that you want to change, correct? This is not something that HR said, hey, let's look at. Well, let me finish before you say it's not right.
I'm trying to answer you.
Okay.
And so this right here, the 4.01 is something that HR has in their works and they're doing. I got my copy from Mary Ann, but these copies came from and were put in by Mike. Michael C. Okay. And Mike put them in so that we would all read at least that there is a responsible procedure that personnel is doing.
For recruitment and hiring.
That's correct. What I'm trying to do is add my idea of a policy into this in some way so that it makes a little more.
Right, and once again, I understand what you're doing, and I understand your objective, but my question is, this is something that HR wants us to review? And this is something they brought forward, or Mike Collar did, or is this something that you want us to review because you want to change it? It's a very direct question.
Well, okay, and Mike Collar did put this in to show the responsible level of commitment that personnel has to each and every person that comes in to their.
Right.
Okay. By discussion, and both Paul and Mark have read this. By discussion, I believe some of this could be incorporated into this document that came, you might call it, and which is part of the personnel documents, personnel handbook. So what I'm asking is for us to go through it and to go through the document that personnel has and see what we can amend into that document.
I'm not an HR specialist. And this feels a little bit like a micromanaging to me on my end, and this is not, I mean, I'm sit on this board to acknowledge and see what other people are bringing towards to me. But I'm not 100% comfortable with all the way this is going. I would rather, if you have something that you want to work with, maybe work with HR and see. But this feels a little bit outside of my lane as a board member on this committee. But because I didn't know that we should be pulling specific things out of what is already a policy and then do our own, you know, to satisfy our objective as an individual. So I'm not feeling quite comfortable because I just got this today too, to understand really how this is working. So I don't know, is this something that we normally do? Because I don't remember ever doing it like this before.
Well, we haven't done it before.
So why are we doing this way now?
We haven't done it before, but we don't have a clear policy other than what was presented to me at the last minute as well. Okay, this policy that is apparently something that is used by personnel, Mark. Is it fully used by personnel? Because there are some things in here where I don't understand that have to do with the length of time that a posting can be made. And
if you don't understand, then have you talked to HR about it beforehand?
That's we have. But we haven't had a discussion here, and I don't know that, you know, you're ready for a discussion here.
Well, I'd be interested in Mark's opinion on, do you believe some of this stuff needs to be incorporated? I mean, you're the HR director. Is it incomplete and some of this needs to be incorporated in here or not? It's a simple question.
I'll tell you what I told the chairman when we spoke about it. As far as revising the table of organization and the organizational charts, we already do that annually through the budget process. So if there are requests at budget time, there's an updated table of organization that gets approved by the board. If we do mid-year changes, the department comes mid-year, adds positions or deletes positions, those are reflected on the table of organization that the board approves every budget year. So from my perspective, we're already doing that. As far as the detailed plan, I guess I would submit my opinion is that's the intent of the agenda item reports that the committees and board receives. So whether it's a plan, whether it's any information that either we would feel would be relevant or that we would anticipate that the committee or the board would want to know, that's our opportunity to provide that information. And obviously, if the committee or board felt that it was wanting, you could redirect us, ask us questions, have us come back, or obviously you could approve or deny the request. Position descriptions. We already do position descriptions. And that's part of our hiring process. When we post a job, we have to post a position description. If it's a brand new position that doesn't exist, typically those position descriptions are done after we know that the position's been approved to actually move forward with a hiring decision. Then we'll craft a position description for the purpose of the job posting. If it's a position that already exists, we have those already, and certainly we can provide those if anyone wants to know, well, what does this particular position do? As far as the posting with an interview process and proper treatment of a resume evaluation, we don't require resumes, we require applications.
We certainly accept resumes or any other supplemental information that's provided. And the job posting, we post all of our jobs a minimum of 5 days. We'll post, if we anticipate that we'll have enough qualified candidates internally, we'll typically post those only internally for county employees. At the conclusion of that, and it's not limited to 5 days, that's the minimum time the job is up and posted. If we don't feel we have qualified or enough applicants internally, we can also post it externally. And some positions we just post immediately as both external and internal to see what comes in. So departments will review applications that come in after the 5 days. There's jobs where if we can get someone in right away and get them hired, we'll have a relatively short turnaround. Other positions like a psychotherapist, I mean, we've had those positions can sometimes be open more than a year. So it really just depends on the type of position and what's out there. So we have a process in place for postings. And as far as budget changes must be in the budget. Well, it's not in this particular policy, that is part of the budget process. Again, any new positions within the budget, we do a summary sheet that breaks down any savings of eliminated positions, any new positions, what the costs are, and certainly any requests that come mid-year have to have those types of costs identified. Otherwise, you know, I'm sure it won't get past the committee or the board if we didn't. And as far as return on investment or impact statement, you know, from my perspective, again, that's part of what we would expect the agenda item report to explain. You know, what's the position? What's the need? Why are we making the request? What alternatives, if any, have been considered? What do we expect? You know, if this is approved, what's going to happen? What's that going to mean? So I think between the budget process and the agenda item reports and our current practice in hiring, from my perspective, we meet these criteria, but they're not necessarily all specifically outlined in our policy.
That's it. Good. So as going forward, we do deal with this policy that is used as a general scope and level of hiring practice. And if they want to enclose a resume, or if they want to enclose an application, there's nothing against that. It would be kind of nice to have everybody do that.
The application or the resume, first of all, if a department's requesting a position that's not already on the table of organization, that job isn't going to get posted until we have approval for it. And so at the time of the request, I wouldn't have any applications or resumes to share with the committee or the board because we haven't even gotten to that point in the hiring process. Once a candidate is selected, right now, any positions that are appointed either by the county executive and confirmed by the board, or would be appointed by the board chairman, confirmed by the board, those are the applications and or resumes, whatever documentation that's sent, that's what you're seeing. So those are for confirmation positions. But if we hire, you know, if we end up adding whatever the position is, say a social worker over at Human Services, those aren't subject to board confirmations. They're not appointments by the executive. We hire someone at highway, you know, unless it's the commissioner, that's not an appointment. So you're certainly not seeing all of those, but you'd see them when they're appointments, but only if they're appointments. And again, if it's a new position and we're asking for the position or requesting funding for a position, we haven't even gotten to the point where we've posted it, where we'd be able to, I mean, we'd be premature to post jobs, solicit applications and select someone when we haven't even gotten the authority to approve.
I'm not comfortable with micromanaging his job like this to the extreme and then going into the resumes and wanting to see all this. So I would like to not do this discussion more and move on to the commendations, please.
That's what we are going to do.
Okay.
Appreciate your thought. Thank you, Mark. So now we'll move on to resolutions for the commendation of Ms. Dauber and Gail Gilchrist.
Move to approve.
Second.
That's it. And the vote?
Aye.
Aye. 3-0. You lost. Okay, with the next meeting date. That would be September 7th.
I will not be here. I will be in Europe.
You're really a traveler, kid.
And my daughter is going to school in Europe. I will be taking her there.
Well, Betsy's not gonna be here. We'll have a quorum. So, we'll deal with that. Adjournment.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Thank you, Betsy.
I wanna get up at like midnight or something.
Yeah, I'm not doing that.
I think it's 1:09.
Well, it'll be in England, so it's not too bad. We're only 6 hours.
6 hours.
We're only